So there's times when I forget that I'm live and I like said something. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And so I hear the gentleman, like the head producer was like, who's she talking to out there? Because it's like live that I'm walking around like apologizing for bumping into someone. It's kind of cool how I've been able to find my feet in cycling outside of racing. So, historically I did the full NRC series, or like, I raced the Redlands Classic 8 times. So for 8 years in a row, I was kind of at the big show. And I didn't really want to do that anymore, but I found the opportunity to do like race commentating. In my foray of like, hey, let's get started with commentating, we're here in the Redlands Bicycle Classic is hosted here, right? And it's been ongoing for 30 plus years, one of kind of like the cornerstones of American racing. And, since last year, he's 2, so Seamus was 8 months old. And so the like logistics of doing stuff is complicated like tenfold. Right. And you don't want to show up and tell them like, hey guys, I have like a baby and you just don't want to play that stuff. But then at the time you're like, I'm sweating because I'm trying to figure out my stuff and make sure I can get back on air in a timely fashion. So that was a tough situation because I'd never met the people before. Whereas like with BWR, there was a lot more communication, say, leading into it. And I was really able to, we're like, yeah, I'll find care for Seamus. It's a lot easier too than it is at like 8 months, right? And Brian was racing a Tour of Taiwan. So he was obviously out of the country and they were like, hey, well, we'd like you to come and do commentating for the Redlands Classic. And I'm thinking like, maybe I'll be in the booth, like, I'll be talking to people who are also going to the hot dog stand, like no stress, right? They're like, no, you're going to be like on video. This is live stream. This is the most legit like live feed. And I can't even remember the company now that was ran it because it's just a complete blur. But they're like, hey, you need to like look professional. And I'm like, well, I was a PE teacher. So, our business casual for PE is literally, you can't show up anywhere like that. So I was like, mad dash. I finally got the kid, I went to my cousin's house and I was like, I'm going to go to Kohl's and I need to buy like polo shirts that don't have any, Nike or like team affiliation on them. So, I showed up just already like crazy stressed, and you get these headphones and, I'm listening to the actual trailer. And that was probably just because it's live. It was much different than the BWR thing because we could kind of save that and we chose what would be posted. And the funny thing was, they had problems with some of the live feed out on the course with some of the motos. And so we became like the show, which I had like, the videographer and my friend was driving a car as part of the race. And like, I know that race course literally like the back of my hand. And so we were able to like hop out and I could do a lot of like color commentating of like, these are stories like, or like, they're like, hey, we need to fill space. And I was like standing in front of the women's race and I was like, oh, Holly, because I know I've raced with her for 10 years. So let me ask her questions. And so that was cool. I always enjoy the option to highlight maybe some of the nuances that's happening in races. Like I said, like when in BWR, the lead is shuffled because maybe someone lost a derailleur, or maybe they crashed, or there's just so much that can happen. And to be able to shed light to like the listener of like, this has literally nothing to do with wattage, right? And the same thing, like looking at with the Redlands Classic, like a lot of this is tactics, or how are you, that's a technical descent, and how's it going to get split up, and who's riding the front. And so I look down, I'm like, these are women I raced mountain bikes with in 2005, right? So I know who they are, and most of them are very well trained with media. And so you come up to them and say, hey, Jenny, like, I know you came from Xterra, and just because of being in it for so long, my mind, like the gentleman from BWR that asked me, I was like, oh yeah, I know this, and this. It's like, how do you know all of that? I was like, I don't know. Like, I probably shouldn't spend so much time on the internet, but just from years of riding, like I know what's going to happen to the, when I at Belgian Waffle Ride, I'm like, that is, the women are world champions, like national champions, Leadville 100 winners, and they're riding. There's a picture of a Cat 3 male who's like 20 riding next to Kathy Pruitt, who's a former world champion downhiller. like the women outclass the men by like tenfold as far as skill and like Palmares. Like if you were to pull those top women as far as their race wins, right? And as far as, you know, what they've achieved in the sport and what they've trailblazed, and having the chance to tell that story. And then also in my mind, I'm like, the vast frustration of these women being stuck with males that are developing their skill set. So men, you will usually out-wattage women just by size, okay? It's like science, okay? No matter how much the women train, the males are very strong, but the women have so much finesse. It's like, you know, the WNBA or collegiate women's basketball is the purest form of the sport because it's all below the rim, it's all fundamentals, it's defense, right? Where it's not the flashy, right? It's not like this prime time, like, oh, look, you know, she just did like a 360 and a dunk, right? But like looking at the mechanics of it, women's cycling is much the same. And so being able to highlight that, like, no, it takes so much work for these women to be in this group of top 30 males, and their skill is so advanced, and, you know, just giving them the kind of that time to shine.